What person have you been a fan of, and now dislike or hate? Story 1. Kevin Spacey. I loved his acting, and was disappointed in both what he did and how he handled it since it all came out. I hate him for robbing us of years of great performances that were sure to come if he hadn't been who he turned out to be. Story 2. Ellen DeGeneres. I actually thought she was really funny most of the time, but her show started to go sideways at some point, and things started to be awkward. I personally liked Tony as a co-host DJ more than Twitch RIP, and this led to some of the awkward moments. Also a lot of "hey, this segment went viral, so let's do it again," which made it feel forced and weird. Story 3. Jennifer Lopez. I believe all the negative encounters people have posted about her. She doesn't seem to have any famous female celebrity friends because a lot of them allegedly can't stand her. I think fame has gone to her head, and she has an ego much bigger than the level of talent she possesses. Story 4. I hate to say it, but Hulk Hogan. When I was a little kid in the 80s I was a Hulkamaniac, and then when I grew up I realized he was an awful shitty person. Story 5. Joss Whedon. Gross creep. I won't let him ruin Buffy, Angel or Firefly, but his undertones are still there. He's not the only one, but the first I thought of when this popped up in my feed. He had it all, and could have just been a normal person at work. Story 60. Phil. Ugh, I hate to even admit it. 30-year-old me thought he was full of wisdom. What he turned out to be. And while I think of it, I'd like to also add Oprah Winfrey as someone who I no longer think of positively. She spawned both DRS, Phil and Oz. Story 7. Nicki Minaj. I was like 10 or 11 when Superbass came out and I was obsessed with her. I'm from South America, so nobody really knew who she was, and there was no merch or anything I could buy except for a vinyl car sticker I found while shopping with my mom. I begged her to buy me the sticker. I put it on my laptop and I had to explain who she was to everyone. I defended her during Stan Wars Online. I remember when Anaconda came out and she got really famous everywhere, and I was proud to say I was her fan since the beginning. Then she defended her pedo brother, and married another pedo rapist. I can't stand her. The way she talks and stands by them while making fun of other women is gross. She is the definition of Delulu, and that coke rant killed her career IMO. Story 8. 8 years working in LA, the entertainment industry, and the list is forever growing. Vin Diesel, Ellen, Steve Martin, Blake Lively, the list goes on and on. The one that rocked me to my core was Demi Moore. Seeing the way she treated PAs was garish. On the flip side, Meryl Streep is a goddess who will never forget your name and always greet you with a smile and a hug. Story 9. Katy Perry. I had her CD in middle school and thought she was so cool. Then she did a performance on that show MTV tried to replace TRL with, the one hosted by Pete Wentz, and she sang so badly. Even young me was like, nah, the hate people hold for her nowadays is vindicating. Edit. I found the clip. Not as bad as I remember. Story 10. I used to think Bill Maher was funny and common sense. Now that I started to fact check and have my own analysis, I find that he is just a self-righteous douchebag, thinking he is the perfect liberal. I still listen to his show, since I like hearing multiple people with different views across all political spectrum, but I find that I disagree with him more than earlier. Story 11. A lot of male celebrities, after you find out they date teenage girls or have been inappropriate with children, loved Seinfeld, but when I remembered that in real life and in his 30s, Jerry was in a relationship with a 17-year-old child. There was an episode that George and Jerry were both attracted to a teenage girl and her cleavage was shown and they were acting like dogs in heat, so gross watching it as an adult, lost all respect because you can sexualize so many adult women but you choose a child instead, so embarrassing. Story 12. Joe Rogan. Reasoning. I used to think he was open-minded and fair, just having a chat and hearing these diverse people out. Turns out he's a peddler of conspiracy theories and bullies and mocks people who disagree with him or oppose with facts and expertise the conspiracies of his favorite guests. Story 13. Dave Grohl. Hate is a strong word, but he's recently left a bad taste in my mouth. My mom and I idolized him, not only for being one of the most fantastic performers alive, but for being a decent stand-up guy amidst the BS of show business. Unfortunately, it seems he's fallen victim to said BS, with his recent cheating scandal and the sudden firing of Josh Freese. I really hope he finds his way, man. Story 14. Katy Perry. What the happened to her? First album was fun and I actually liked her pursuit of success, but she's now a bit of a freak. Some people just change too much with fame. Story 15. J.K. Rowling. Used to love her for the world she built. Now I can't stand her for her bigotry. Still like the books, movies, fanfiction and Lego Harry Potter, but I won't let her get a penny in royalties from me. Fortunately I got the Switch version of Lego Harry Potter before she fully exposed her views, but anything else, I'll pirate. Yo dash, a pirate's life for me. Story 16. Biggest one for me is Elon. Recently it's Bill Maher. Then there are people I don't necessarily hate, but I'm just disappointed in. I genuinely enjoyed their work and wish things had turned out differently. Louis C.K. There were a couple years where he was one of my favorite comedians, but what he did really undercut his legacy. Chris D'Elia. Same story. Dr. Disrespect. I was just a fan of the character and the energy. Cuomo brothers. Both had moments where they seemed like steady hands during chaos, and honestly, I just plain miss Al Franken. He wasn't perfect, but he had integrity, intelligence, and a sense of humor that felt rare in politics. His resignation still feels like a loss. Story 17. James Franco. He was such a good actor, and I assumed he was a good person. He's one of the cases that it's impossible to separate the art from the artist. Story 18. I came real close to going down the alt-right pipeline in middle school. I was 11 or 12 years old in middle school saying how much I disliked feminists and how men were unfairly treated by society. And I was Ben Shapiro's biggest fan. I thought he was so smart and the way he'd shut down all of those blue-haired liberals was elegant. As I was hitting puberty, I realized how much of an I was being, and I began to think critically about what was being shown to me, and I underwent some pretty major personality changes. Turns out Ben Shapiro really only is smart by 12-year-old standards. I think ultimately I fell into that hole because I was a scared and lonely kid. I was the perfect audience for the alt-right grift, the kind of person they still go after these days at an alarmingly successful rate. Check up on your men and boys. It may not be too late for some of them. Don't let them turn into like I almost was. Story 19. Amy Schumer. I don't hate or dislike her, but I don't find her to be funny anymore. TBH, I don't even remember why I did, but I remember liking her at one point. Story 20. Neil Gaiman. I'm a librarian and have developed many graphic novel collections at various libraries around the country. His works were always a big part of that. I've put his books in the hands of many patrons. I hate how much CD money I've spent on that mother. Story 21. Neil Patrick Harris. Loved his acting in Him. Then I learned about his vile, abhorrent and disgusting party after Amy Winehouse's death. Look it up. He served a cake in the form of her corpse. It is so vile. Oh yeah, he apologized afterwards, like he didn't know about this at all. The image of the cake can be disturbing. BTW. Story 22. Joss Whedon. Grew up with Buffy and Angel. Loved Firefly and Dr. Horrible. Cabin in the Woods and Avengers was amazeballs. Then found out how awful of a human he was. Story 23. Ricky Gervais. Great when he was having a go at privileged Hollywood elite and pious religious fanatics, but hated when he started punching down on trans. Cheap and easy road to take. Story 24. Adam Levine. Used to love his music in middle school, but when you actually sit down and listen to his lyrics as an adult, you can clearly see how he feels about women. In every song it's always the woman's fault for doing something wrong and never him. He's always the victim. Women always run away and they need to be punished. There's always involved in some way. Everything just feels icky now. It's worse when you consider his love life. IRL. He can't keep a relationship. Story 25. I used to think Elon Musk was just an eccentric rich guy who made cool cars, played with flamethrowers and wanted to colonize Mars. Now I know he's a Nazi. Story 26. Melanie Martinez. First got into her when I was too young to understand how weird and creepy Crybaby was. Now with the rape allegations, the NFT BS, her allegedly cheating, and just a bunch of other stuff that makes her seem like an I just get an ick whenever I see people idolizing her. Her fanbase is also insane as, maybe because a lot of the lonely kids that relate to her music are also neurodivergent, so they develop a sort of special interest in her. Not only do they harass anyone and make up crazy excuses for anything she's ever done, the merch collections are concerning to say the least. Story 27. Mr. Beast. He used to be a cool guy, however, he's kind of become a supervillain. I'm giving it to years until he does a challenge that causes a person to die. Story 28. Ryan Reynolds and The Rick for simply not doing their jobs. Hulk Hogan for being a lying, racist POS. Vince McMahon for everything shitty he's done. All US politicians. As I've grown older, I've realized they're selfish and only care about putting money in their own pockets. Story 29. This might get me some heat, but Jack Black, something about him throwing Kyle under the bus like that immediately gave me a sour taste. In that moment I was like, oop, he's a sellout now. Story 30. Will Smith. I had such a positive opinion of him before the slap. I knew he was in an open marriage before that, and that is between him and Jada, so I didn't judge him on that. But come on man, you're fine with someone screwing your wife but not fine with them making a joke. Story 31. I wish I could say Joe Rogan, but I've never really been a fan of his, nor do I dislike him completely. I just don't like some things about him and never have. Story 32. Elon. I thought he would usher in a new age of peace and prosperity for everyone. Turns out it was just for himself. Jill Stein, Green Party candidate turned Russian shill. Bill Maher used to have a bit of optimism and would stick up for the little guy, but he punches down all the time. Sits on his little talks and just rips on people who can't defend themselves and are marginalized. Meatloaf, great singer, but a piece of person, anti-science, anti-vax, dead of COVID. Mel Gibson, fantastic actor, but total conservative, misogynistic. John Voight, father to Angelina Jolie, about the only good thing that ever came from him. Conservative conspiracy theorist and Jan 6 huge Trump supporter. Story 33. Meatloaf. I was so disappointed to find out he died of COVID because he was an anti-masker. Like, come on man, the masks were to help protect you, it wasn't about controlling you. SMDH. Story 34. Dave Grohl. He was one of my musical idols in my younger years. In the past few years he's destroyed his marriage, and just recently let go of their drummer Josh Freese for absolutely no reason. The band seems lost since Taylor Hawkins passed, and it just sucks to see. Story 35. Bill Cosby, Neil Gaiman, Rowling, Snoop, John Hamm. The first four have been mentioned. But hey race, why I don't like Ham hazing dating show. He refuses to talk about the first, and he's every revolting day trapey frat guy in the second. Story 36. Wayne Gretzky. I remember seeing him carry the Olympic torch in Vancouver 2010 and cheering for the Great One as a legendary symbol of our country. A great Canadian, our boy, but now he's gone MAGA and can write off and stay in the States for all I care. Story 37 Bill Maher, I could put up with the 20 of opinions I disagreed with because of the 80 I did, then he started getting into quack medicine, whining constantly about woke, and finally being a tool for Trump. I'm done with him. Story 38 Oprah, I appreciated her overcoming adversity in her youth and promoting literacy through her book club, but she's definitely given a platform to terrible people. Diddy, Dr. Oz, Dr. Phil, and everything I've heard about her off camera makes me think she's terrible too. Story 39 Neil deGrasse Tyson, initially, I really enjoyed how he made science accessible and engaging. However, over time, his tendency to nitpick trivial inaccuracies in movies and shows became irritating rather than insightful. It felt like he transitioned from passionate science communicator to someone overly focused on correcting minor pop culture details, losing sight of what made him enjoyable in the first place. Story 40 Ronda Rousey, she was a real inspiration to women's MMA while she had her win streak, but as soon as she lost she became the most incredible sore loser, enough to switch sports even, real letdown. Story 41 Jerry Seinfeld laughs at the genocide of Palestinians, whined about cancel culture and wokeness. Dave Chappelle spent like 4 or 5 comedy specials bitching about trans people and crying about being cancelled while making $20 million per Netflix special. Chappelle's show era Dave would roast the out of rich old crybaby Dave. Make that any comedian who has whined about cancel culture. None of them have ever been or will get arrested merely for performing like Lenny Bruce or Ella Fitzgerald or Dizzy Gillespie and many others did in the past. Soft, crybaby hacks and nothing more. Story 42 Gwen Stefani, I have been a fan since Tragic Kingdom. I've been to numerous concerts, bought her clothes, perfumes, etc., and through some of her mishaps over the years I had always found a way to give her the benefit of the doubt, but this recent country music trad wife phase and the Catholic app commercial was the last straw. I have never understood her relationship with Blake, and while I am all for exploring new things, her current persona is just too fake, makes my inner teenager sad. Story 43 As a child, I was a fan of Taylor Swift. When she was doing country, between the dropping of Reputation and Lover, my opinion had changed and I haven't liked her much since. I don't actively go out of my way to hate her, but if people ask me how I feel about her, I say meh with a shoulder shrug because I'd rather not explain all of the reasons why. Edit I guess I've always expected Swifties to become offended over my opinion even though everything she's done over these years are easily researchable. Story 44 I liked Jordan Peterson when he initially came out with his rules for life, but watching him become hyper-political and wade deep into the modern-centered social debates was a huge letdown. I get that he likely has these thoughts and feelings prior to his rise in fame, but it didn't seem to arise in the beginning. Basically what I saw was him transforming from a modern-style inspirational speaker to a political pundit was disappointing. We have too many of those currently. Can't stand to listen to him now. Story 45 Lil Dicky, I loved him, then he made a track with Chris Brown, who is a woman-beating man-child piece of. I don't hate Dicky now, but I don't have any respect for him or anyone else that turns a blind eye to someone else's abusive ways. It wasn't a decision as much as a natural disinterest in him now. Disappointing. Story 46 Ryan Reynolds, I grew up coming home every day and watching one of his movies on Comedy Central. He's turned into quite an annoying insecure comedian and am waiting for his downfall. Story 47 Kevin James, I thought he was so cute and then kept reading stories that he's a diva and absolute garbage to his fans and it was a complete turn off, and now I can't even watch him. Story 48 Bill Cosby, he was one of the greatest stand-up comedians, made 2 amazing sitcoms, and was a champion of education. He was also a predator and I just can't laugh at his jokes about family life knowing who he is. Story 49 John Fetterman, took my son to rallies, donated to his campaigns, he had a stroke and came out of it with an altered ideology. He now stands against the very things that made him beloved by progressives in Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania. Story 50 Elon Musk, I went from discovering him because multiple people told me I looked like him, to appreciating his efforts and the work he does with the companies he owns. Now he's buying his way into power, and using his money to have rapists elected as president, also that he can get even richer. He incites violence in other countries that don't have a right-wing leadership. Here in the UK he tried to make already violent riots even worse, implying that the government should be overthrown. Just a disgusting piece of TBH. Blake Lively, I used to like her a lot especially in her Gossip Girl era. Now, after seeing all these interviews of her, I can't stand her. Story 51 Are we avoiding the obvious ones? Cause Bill Cosby's image has duly deteriorated greatly in the past, 10 years anyway, my opinion sank along with his public image. It's kinda political, but my attitude towards Scott Adams soured about 10 years ago. I wouldn't wish his recently revealed prostate cancer on him, but I would have welcomed his disappearance from the public eye. Come to think of it, there are a handful of celebrities I've come to dislike for similar reasons. Tim Allen, Sylvester Stallone, Jon Voight, even Carrie Underwood. Story 52 Woody Allen, I loved his movies and his sense of humor, but man, this guy's a major creep. I can't bring myself to watch his movies, especially the ones he's in, or read his books anymore. Also the guy that played Reese in Person of Interest. I used to rewatch that show all the time, but now I can't because of his views. Story 53 I was telling someone the other day I can't watch or read anything to do with Anthony Bourdain, and that was my immediate feeling upon hearing that he died by suicide. Just too sad. Story 54 Joe Rogan, I used to listen to him every day 10 to 12 years ago, now I can't stand him. He's so corny and acts like he's a genius or some super tough bow and arrow using elk-eating T2 Terminator. Story 55 rolling. I started reading Harry Potter at 11, right when I was Harry's age. I projected a lot through him. I was the kind of kid that did the library parties and had to get the new book when it came out, got into the fandom majorly. Before I grew up, got other interests and fandoms, etc., but it was fond childhood memories. I wanted to ignore her, I really did. I wanted to just pass on the first criticisms as a, oh, well it's just like your problematic aunt, she's older, from a different generation, etc., but she's become unspeakably cruel. I can't imagine having all the money in the world, all the good you can do with it, and then wasting your time flaunting your wealth and how you can use it to persecute a minority. It just keeps going. She keeps getting worse. She openly supports the most fascistic people. She's worse than a Death Eater, at this point. And talking about her and what she's doing is absolute poison on the internet. She's a lightning rod for hate. Well, I projected so hard onto Harry because it turned out that I'm trans. That's never going to change, Joe. It's not something that can be changed. What a disappointment. What an absolute joke. Those books comforted me when I didn't understand why I was so different. But I am glad I outgrew anything she ever made. Story 56. I used to love Katy Perry when I was growing up. The incident with the kid on American Idol left a bad taste in my mouth at the time. Every new thing I've learned about her or seen since has been disappointing. I can't stand her, especially after the spaceflight nonsense. Story 57. Eric Clapton. That racist piece of, how dare he rip of Jimmy left and right and have the audacity to behave the way he does. Howard Stern. Listen to him every day for years. Now I can't stand him. Story 58. Dave Chappelle. How has he not been mentioned? Absolute comedy icon turned defensive, nobody can take a joke anymore, turned full-on punch-down bully. Not sure I've ever had and lost as much respect for anyone. Story 59. I used to be a huge fan of Ellen DeGeneres. Her show was my little happy place. Good vibes, dancing and surprise giveaways. I genuinely thought she was just the super kind, funny person who wanted to make people smile, but then all that stuff came out about how she treated her staff and guests behind the scenes. It totally threw me off. I don't hate her or anything, but definitely not a fan anymore. Story 60. Elon Musk. When the guy first appeared, he was that fun type of millionaire. You know, the guy with too much cash lying around, so he did the stuff everyone would like to do. Build some spaceships, build a flamethrower, cause why not, make a tunnel for no reason whatsoever, smoke a joint in a podcast and send your car into space simply cause you can, like a fun uncle, a bit weird but entertaining, and now does it even need to be said? Story 61. PewDiePie. I gradually lost interest in his videos over time as my tastes evolved. Then the heated gaming moment happened. I also recently rewatched some of his older videos that I used to watch as a teen out of curiosity and thought to myself, I actually found this funny. CinemaSins used to find their older videos funny. I tapped out because their videos got less and less funny they went along, and eventually I realized just how media illiterate and brain dead their criticism actually is. Mike Pollock, voice of Dr. Eggman. Sonic is my favorite game franchise. I remember excitedly asking him a fairly innocuous question on Twitter about the production of the Sonic Boom cartoon back when I was 14. In hindsight, it was a question that he would not have realistically had the answer to, but I would not have known that at my age back then. He made an extremely rude response to my question. Of course, he's recently caused a lot of controversy lately over his political stance on a topic which I'm not sure I'm allowed to mention in this subreddit. If you know, you know, and his history of unprofessional behavior towards his fans, which lines up with the experience I had with him. JK Rowling. I don't need to explain this, you know why she's here. Zebra Corner, a YouTuber that made some pretty funny skits lampooning Chevy commercials among other things. He hadn't uploaded in a while, so I was curious and looked him up. Turns out he's in prison for being a repeat CSA offender. Needless to say, I'm not a fan of his anymore. Elon Musk. I was never really a fan of his, but I bought into his image as this genius pioneer for the future. I don't think I have ever been more wrong about someone in my life. David Draymond, lead singer for Disturbed. Same political issue as Mike Pollock. All I'll say on the matter is that the practice of gleefully signing bombs as part of a photo op, no less, that are going to kill civilians is not just disgusting, it's psychotic immo. Completely ruined Disturbed's music for me. Mel Gibson. I'll admit to not having seen many of his movies, but I loved him in Lethal Weapon. Didn't love hearing what he had to say about Judaism, gay people and black people, or how he treats his family. Neil Gaiman. Being a domestic abuser is bad enough. Writing stories seemingly condemning domestic violence and assault, while simultaneously committing it in real life, is a whole other level of evil. Joss Whedon. Story 62. Teresa Giudice. So disappointing after she hit married. After researching, Teresa literally caused the takedown of NJHW. Her inability to get along with others caused the takedown. So sad, she ruined herself.